Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is what is this? This is week. I'm losing track already. I think it's week 5. We're on chapter 4. This chapter is on affordances. Now, I'm going to try to go through the chapter stuff rather quickly because I want to show you a couple of videos that I came across over the course of this past week, and also wanted to, share with you all some current events and maybe some thoughts on, a lot of the activities that are going on. And, somebody was asking me what is, this computer mediated communications. And, it's a pretty, I kind of look at it like any kind of communications that occurs over the internet. And there's like a multitude of ways that we can communicate nowadays. And I think that sometimes I look at the book and it seems a little bit limiting because it takes a kind of a snapshot of things that we might all kind of take for granted. I think the best way to approach the book is that it's kind of giving us a little glimpse into the features that these communication mediums offer. It's like a little glimpse. But when you start to dive into it, it can go pretty deep. And when I say deep, it depends on how you all want to kind of pursue this field. If it's just a matter of like you using, the various platforms like Instagram or Facebook or Zoom or whatever, you'll get a sort of a taste of it. But if you start to, let's say, want to design an application or you want to do some research in this field, then it can get, it can go pretty deep. So I wanted to share that just because it's a perspective that gives you a little bit of context. Sometimes you might, read this stuff and go, what does this have to do with anything? But as you start to dig a little deeper, this is kind of just scratching the surface. And as you dig a little deeper, it does go pretty deep. So with that kind of preface to this chapter, I will proceed. And maybe I'll just ask if anybody wants to attempt to define what is an affordance. Let me share the screen here, and then I'll take anybody that. Whoops, where did it go? Hold on, are you guys still there?
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to find where my presentation went. Okay, here we go. Okay, hold on. Hang with me. So anybody want to attempt to, define what is an affordance? Well, you're just gonna let me.
How something is used, or like the use of an object or a mode of communication.
So is it a feature, or is it something that you as a participant have to be accustomed to or familiar with? Yeah, I'm still I kind of lost my my shared screen here. Okay. Let me try this. So I'm gonna share it this way. It's not quite acting the way I wanted to act, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to maybe give me a sense of what you think an affordance is. And you know, it is kind of like a feature, but it's not only a feature of the application that you're using, but it's also very closely tied to the participant and how they use it. So think of it like this. It's like this particular feature is affording you the ability to do something. And how we as participants in any of these platforms will start to use that platform in a way that satisfies, you know, whatever, let's say, communications that we want to do. So I look at it like it's an affordance. It affords us the ability to communicate in ways that, you know, best get our message across. That's kind of a high level sort of definition of affordances. Now, let's see what this chapter talks about. So the idea is that, you know, affordance is a feature perceived and used by the participant. And, you know, when I started off talking about affordances, you know, they could be anything from, and we'll go into this a little bit later, some of the environments that you're able to access these applications, whether it's like, you know, on a high bandwidth connection or a low bandwidth connection. High bandwidth, you might be able to do, you know, like a video. On a low bandwidth, you might only be able to do text. So those are sort of the environment. And so what does the environment enable us to do? So this is kind of this reciprocity between perception and the use of the medium. Hold on, let me just check on something real quick here. Do you guys see the recording that says that this is being recorded?
Yes.
Let me, you do, okay. So now the affordance also will depend on the experience of the user. So that'll make a difference on how, you know, that particular platform is able to get a message across. And one, you know, an example of that would be if you're really experienced at using, let's say, or creating videos on TikTok, and you're able to become a well sort of received influencer, you know, that's kind of like the level of expertise, and it makes a difference between that level and maybe somebody like me who rarely posts anything on TikTok. I just, you know, watch stuff. So that's kind of like where some of that experience comes in. Now, if you look at things like X or Facebook, you know, there's people that are kind of in the PR business that have a really good sense of how does that platform help to get a message. And they, you know, these messages could be clients, and the clients are paying them for helping to get their business, you know, noticed on let's say Facebook or Instagram. And that level of experience will result in how they are able to get, you know, the kind of attention or eyeballs or metrics for whatever program, you know, they're getting put in place and getting out there. So again, you know, the level of expertise makes a difference if you're kind of like just a user, or if you're now kind of becoming professional at it, like whether it's like as an influencer or, you know, as somebody that's actually got clients, to do some of this representing their companies. This is really kind of just you have these medium constraints, and the constraints in the earlier chapters, we're talking about richness and naturalness and synchronicity. Those are some of the constraints. And then you got these potential. The potentials are stuff that, what can you do with these platforms? And how can you accomplish the task at hand? And that task could be things like, you've got a customer and they're wanting to get more eyeballs, or they want to sell more bento lunches or whatever, and you got a program. So the way that you do that through the medium are these affordances. It affords you the ability to get that message out there. So any questions? Any questions? Kind of like, let me also kind of check something real quick, or I lose. Okay. Any questions up until this point? Okay, let me get back here. Okay, so we're back to this presentation on this particular chapter, and there's these categories, the false hidden affordances. Now, depending on how you are defining what an affordance is, I was kind of doing some research on UI, UX, and when you are like a user interface person and you're designing a website to do something, there are things that you will use to enable people to, maneuver and navigate through your particular platform. So I'll give you an example. Like sometimes you'll get to a website and then you'll see a button, and the button will lead you to something that you want to, let's say, register for. So that button is an affordance. Now there's another example would be like, that's an obvious one, where it's kind of like a false affordance. One example would be like, there's a website that I like to go to. It's called Radio Garden. And then Radio Garden allows you to listen to some radio stations across the country or across the world. But it puts in advertising. And then in the advertising, it sort of just pops up, on the screen. And obviously you don't want to just spend time looking at that ad, right? So you're looking for ways to click on it to get rid of it. And what I found is that sometimes there's a little X that comes up. So you can click on the X and then, that page will disappear. Or it will display in another way where there's a banner, and the banner will say, go back, you want to go back to Radio Garden. So you click on that and go back, it goes back, and it removes the ad. But I've run into situations where the ad will pop up and there is no way to kind of like remove the ad. So I end up kind of like closing the whole app out and then launching it again. So those are some examples of how UI UX kind of plays a role in the application development, and it could result in a false affordance or a hidden affordance. And this kind of encounter, and you as a participant kind of have to get either you become aware of these, it influences the way you want to use the application. And in more sort of complex environments, like let's say a Zoom environment, it'll start to impact the way you are perceived, I guess, as a participant on that platform. I hope that kind of makes sense. But that's how I've been thinking through, a lot of what this chapter is talking about. Okay. This slide is not that important. Okay. So 3 criteria for affordances. So this idea that it's not a characteristic of the medium because it's not something that is inherent necessarily in the medium. It may be a feature, and then you as a participant can start using that feature, and it affords you the ability to do things, get your let's say message out there. So an affordance is not necessarily a characteristic of the medium, but there are features in that platform that allow you to start to develop these affordances. It's not a communication outcome. So affordances in and of itself is not the outcome. The outcome ultimately is how you use that platform and whatever features it affords you to then get your message out there. And again, it's not a binary yes or no. So these affordances can be somewhat subjective based on how your expertise allows you to best utilize it. Okay, so 3 characteristics of affordances. It'll start to emerge in communication practice. So as you start to use these platforms, you'll become more and more familiar with what works and what doesn't work as you start to develop, your presence on that platform. So kind of think of it this way. It's like, remember, I think you have like Instagram and Facebook, and you post something there and it stays there, right? It's kind of perpetual. That's sort of a feature. But then there were a lot of people that weren't happy about it being perpetual. So that's when Snapchat became popular, because Snapchat, the messages or the posts would kind of disappear. And so that's an environment that is temporary. And so, it appealed to a certain kind of community that wanted to use that kind of format as a means for communications. So again, that's an example. That's an example of a feature that was an affordance that people could choose to want to go the route of, sort of a perpetual existence on the net, or this temporary. Let's see, participants use affordances for CMCs, technology, communication, social affordance are all ways that ultimately you as a participant interact and develop your kind of personification on any of these platforms. So this kind of just delves more into the definition of a technology affordance, a communication affordance, and a social affordance. As a technological affordance, interaction between technology and communication use. So again, how does the technology enable you to communicate? communication affordance is interaction between the perception of communication potential and use. So how is it that the environment enables you to communicate something? Okay, and again, this is kind of getting subtle, but it's how do you use, in combination with technology, the ability for that particular platform to then communicate what it is that you want to get the message out there. And then social affordance, interaction between participant and medium that changes social practice. And the social affordance is how you are able to build a social kind of connection between you and the people that you're communicating to. So these are some examples. You have sort of like this message construction, and message construction could be very different between your ability to, let's say, do a synchronous video kind of communication versus a text, via SMS or email. It's also the ability to successfully engage with others. Okay? And given those two examples, whether you're texting and creating sort of an interaction with others via a text platform versus doing something more rich with video. Okay? And that's the ability to engage with others. And then you have this group communication. What does the technology enable you to do in terms of communicating to a broader group? And text has some limitations, to how big your group can be. And then like in Zoom, that's another example of sort of a rich environment that you can actually communicate to, quite a bit of people. So these are some more specific examples of these affordances that we've talked about this in the previous chapters, but it gives you a little different kind of perspective on how these it could be a feature of the platform, but how does it sort of impact the use of that particular platform? So let's say bandwidth as an example. The amount and kind of queues that are available. So with bandwidth, you can think of it as you have low bandwidth versus higher bandwidth. And then so you have different kinds of queues that are available as a result of one or the other. So that's an example of some of these impact on your message construction. Now, next one is like editability. How are you able to convey your message, but before you hit the send button, are you able to edit it? And again, that's kind of like a comparison between email, text versus something like like Zoom, which is in our case synchronous. So there's less chance of me editing what it is that I'm saying versus like me prepping an email and then getting ready to send it off. I can edit it by just reading it over, making sure that there's no misspellings, and it's got pretty concise sort of message and call to action. So these affordances are, again, the environment that the platform enables you to take advantage of. Rehearsability, the ability to rehearse and adjust a message before sending. And so 2 and 3 are kind of similar, like the ability to edit something and the ability to rehearse something. And rehearse gives you the chance to revise or make better. And then you got this persistence. So how permanent is that message across time? And that's, you know, the example of some of the short messaging like Snapchat and some of the more permanent messages like Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok, I guess, for example. And again, you know, as we've gotten used to the idea that a lot of these platforms, you know, are kind of driven by ad dollars, and the persistence of the message is a direct reflection of you as the person, you know, like sending the message, being a part of the message. And so that's valuable information that any of these advertisers want to know about. So if it's persistent, then there's, you know, the ability for analysis to be done to better understand, you know, you as a consumer. And then you got this affordance of privacy and visibility, the ability to keep private or make visible to particular audiences. And again, you know, this is like in the kind of like Facebook environment. You know, can you actually find stuff on Facebook if you were to do a Google search? Facebook is sort of behind, you know, sort of like the Facebook wall. So it's less likely that you're going to find stuff directly from a Google search. And similarly, you know, it's probably similarly in terms of difficulty finding specific stuff on X. Although, you know, there are tools now that can get you to the specific tweet or message, you know, that was sent out on X. So the ability to find stuff. Now, that's kind of like stuff that we as users might try to find. But there's, you know, if you're in any of these companies that are building analysis tools that allow, whether it's, you know, search engines or even AI to learn about the users, they're able to dig much deeper into the actual data and information to provide that kind of analysis to potential, you know, ad clients. And then you got personalization, the ability to tailor messages to specific audiences. And again, you know, depending on the platform, you're able to create the personification of yourself and the message that ultimately is getting across, you know, to your community. So again, these are affordances, kind of like environments that these platforms enable you to better kind of construct your message and then get it out there. So engaging, and ultimately, you know, all of this is how do you use any of these tools to better engage. And ultimately, you know, when you think about engaging, it's always, you know, especially since this is a communications class, you know, you're engaging to communicate something. So let's say, you know, we start off with this social presence. You know, the perception and use of the sense that participants are close to one another. So if you're developing you know, a community, does the platform allow you to create this environment that the participants feel close to one another? And you know, I'll give you an example. Like in the work that I do, we convene something called the broadband hui, and it's community stakeholders that are interested in helping to close the digital divide. Most of the time, we're interacting via Zoom, just like we are in this class. But in addition to Zoom, I'm using the phone, I'm using email, I'm using text to continue, to develop the relationship with these participants. So again, this is, not only one way of communicating. You can use a multitude of ways to communicate, ultimately leveraging the strengths of each of these communication platforms to build your community and help to get that message, whatever message it is that you want to help get out there. Network association, conversation with a broad network, distributed individuals. So the technology enables us to cast a pretty wide net. And so, if you think about how this kind of communication was done, let's say 20 years ago, I mean, a lot of it was much more rudimentary, and the ways of getting out there to a broad audience was much more difficult. And what the internet and these applications have done is lowered the barrier to getting out to more individuals, not only in your sort of immediate circle, but across the country, around the world. Accessibility, communicating across time and space. So we're on a Zoom call, everybody's taking this class. For the most part, you're all from Hawaii, but this could be a Zoom class that anybody around the world could participate in. It would be at a certain time, and it would be, like in our case, starting at 12 noon, but it could be, it could be 3 o'clock in California, it could be 6 o'clock, on the East Coast, but they could still join. So it's all happening in space and time at that particular, moment. You have conversational control, and this is the ability to manage the flow of information. You got triggered attending, you got observe online conversation until unique topic of interest. You have meta voicing, comment on presence and participation of others. And both of these are examples of features like within a Zoom kind of environment where, if we were having a conversation and a open dialogue, we could move and meander based on the topic of interest and where the interest level, of the group wants to go. And then this idea of, meta voicing, giving the mic to others, depending on how the moderator, like in my case, I want it to flow. And so there is power that's given to the host or the moderator that allows others to, sort of take the floor. And then this generative role taking leadership role, creating productive group dialogue. Again, these are features that a platform might enable, and it's the ability to manage the conversation in this group kind of dynamic. Now, in group communications, you have the individual and the ability and availability to one group member, but not to others. So in other words, me as the host, I'm doing sort of like the talking, but I could open it up, and if anybody wants to sort of chime in and provide feedback or some comment. That's definitely something that I would encourage. You got the collective members using these platforms in specialized complementary ways. So these group communications could become more, let's say, specific around a particular topic. And so then, we have more of a common ground in terms of members and what the members want to talk about. And then you got this shared environment, all group members having common access to a medium characteristic. So, let's say we were moving from a Zoom call to everybody and we wanted to break out into breakout sessions. And then we could use something like they used to call Jamboards, but I think Google discontinued Jamboard. But then that's an environment where you have group members with a common interest moderating a breakout session and using a tool like a Jamboard, to communicate what it is that you want to get across. Okay. Now these are some examples of applying these affordances and how does someone, let's say, save face in the situation where they might have misspoken or done something kind of erroneously. So, you have these correcting misinformation on social media. So synchronous, relatively sensitive. Synchronous, it's happening almost immediately. And, those kinds of situations, you have to resort to things like whether it's deleting it or going back on and correcting yourself. These are some of the features, I guess, that platforms will enable you. I think, when we're talking about like perception, there's this idea of editability. And like if you were on Twitter before, right? You post a tweet and you couldn't edit a tweet. So let's say you posted it and you had a misspelling. I've actually done that before. But you can't go back and edit it. So the only recourse you have really is to delete it, So anyway, that's kind of an example of what that particular platform enabled people to do. You have these nonverbal cues, perceived responses, and these nonverbal cues, could be anything from a video call and then looking at the people's responses, as a result of the video delivery, of expression. And then you have this publicness, private, reduces, sort of embarrassment. So when you say publicness, how public is it that you've put yourself out there, right? Is it public to a wide audience? And then if it's more of a smaller audience, you reduce the amount of the actual embarrassment that might have occurred. So the example they talked about in the book about, police shootings, the perception of Facebook anonymity, that people would speak up. But then another sort of environment where the network of like-minded individuals, people would want to speak up because it's like-minded individuals. So you have kind of these different environments that enable people to still feel confident that they should say something. One is, anonymity. Nobody knows who you are. You can say whatever you want. But if you have an environment where, like-minded people are sharing the space, people are more willing to speak up because it's like-minded people. The perception of persistence, people are less likely to speak up because if there's a sense that there's, whatever you say is going to be there for forever, then they are probably less inclined to want to say something. So anonymity, network persistence, influence is the choice of what it is that you decide to do, given the environment to respond. And then again, this is just the author kind of just does a affordance analysis, looking at the conceptual challenge. How do you, if you start to get into the research in this particular area, how would you start to analyze one platform or another if you were trying to measure, the ability for affordances to successfully get your message out there. Affordances exist in reciprocity between perceiver and the medium. And then, finally, again, just kind of a summary of the analysis and critique, the benefit, empirical research results, computer-mediated communications, knowledge sharing, collaboration, shared efficiency, group work, achieved consensus. So again, a little, just a kind of a concluding comment about the affordances and how, you would measure the success of a particular platform or even a program, when you start to try to do some more sort of scientific analysis on whether this is, this particular platform is successful or this campaign was successful. So that kind of is the, overview of affordances based on this approach, to what is an affordance and how we as participants find value, in any of the platforms that we are exploring and using and building some expertise in. So that's, I just wanted to give you guys now a chance to ask any questions. And then I did want to show a couple of videos that I thought were kind of interesting as a result of this past week of current events. So if you have any questions, let me know. If not, I can share my screen and show you a couple of videos that I think are pretty reflective of some current events, especially in the context of this topic of again, CMC, internet, communicating. Now, before I show you this one, I want to ask you, anybody can tell me, and I'm sure there's somebody in this class that can tell me, what does it mean when somebody says 6-7? Can anybody tell me what does that mean? 6-7?
Wait, say it again?
I'm just kind of like this came up in a couple of instances where it was kind of a Gen Z thing, it's like we're kind of asking, like, what is some of the terminologies that people use that other people don't understand and don't haven't picked up on, and one of them was 6-7. So I'm asking you all, can you guys explain to me what 6-7 is? Christian, you got you got something?
From what I have come to learn about it, it apparently came from a song. It was like some rap song, and then he says something, and he's like 6-7, and so people have just been using that. I don't think it necessarily has any meaning, like any true meaning.
I think it
like kind of like how some of the words we've changed to mean different things. Like lit used to be like for a candle, like the candle is lit, but now it's something we use for like, oh, this is hype, this is cool. So yeah, I don't think it necessarily has like a true genuine meaning. But I've seen it all over the place too.
Yeah, okay. Any other feedback on your guys sort of like when you hear 6-7, what do you guys interpret it as?
I think people kind of use it as like a what's up or like how's it going? Like 6-7. I don't know. Just like people just kind of toss it around now. I don't know. I don't think it has like a one version of a definition. It's kind of people just took it and ran with it.
Okay. I kind of agree that it probably lost its original meaning and it just has sort of like a I don't know, like a collective response. Would you say that it's a good thing or a bad thing? Is it a negative thing or no? This is for the benefit of people like Steve and Jim and Ken, because this is news to us.
I don't think it necessarily is one way or the other. It's kind of like Christian was saying, like the word lit, like it's like
Yeah. Okay, so let me run this video by you guys, and you guys can tell me whether this is for real or not. Okay, hold on. Let me share my screen here. Wish I could put this on pause. It doesn't want to pause. Okay, hold on. Okay, can you see this? Okay, so it's playing, but let me turn up the sound and let me know if you guys can hear the sound.
What do the numbers 6-7, the basketball player LaMelo Ball, and the rapper Skrilla have in common? Well, they're all involved in this latest TikTok trend. On December 1st, 2024, Skrilla released the song "Do Suit" with a music video on YouTube. At one point in the song, Skrilla says 6-7 in reference to 67th Street in Chicago. The same day, TikToker Mossy Grimblot posted a video of someone giving commentary on NBA player LaMelo Ball's game, discussing his height in reference to how he plays. Once the commentator says his actual height, which happens to be 6'7", the Skrilla song begins playing alongside a compilation of footage of the basketball player. He literally moves like somebody that's. The video gained over 9.6 million views in 2 months. Throughout January 2025, the song was further popularized on TikTok and Instagram Reels through a variety of videos, including edits and lift-ups. More and more creators started making content using the song, referring to Ball and the consecutive number 6-7. For example, on January 7th, Instagram user Atlas Production posted a reel in which 6-7 is shouted during the stand-up show, followed by a transition to the song playing over LaMelo Ball footage. The reel garnered over 2.6 million views in 3 weeks. As these spread, creators would start referring to the song more in the context of their own lives, lip-dubbing to it as they encounter the numbers 6 and 7 in random ways. On January 26th, TikToker AG Trippin posted a video compiling several clips of people making 6-7 jokes, garnering over 4.8 million views in a week. What time was that? Around like 6.
Okay, did you guys did the audio go over? You guys could hear that? Is that a yes?
Yeah, we could hear it. That's fine.
Okay, good. Okay. Now, I'm hoping that TikTok or not, well, I post this up on YouTube and I shared with you guys. It's not a public link. So hopefully I don't get taken down because I recorded the whole, I kind of played the whole thing. Okay. So that's one that I wanted to play for you guys. The other one that I wanted to share with you This is, we got time? Yeah, we got time. So this is something called, where'd it go? Where did it go? See. I might have to wait till next, maybe the next, no, I can find it. Hold on. Okay. Before I play the next video, I wanted to have you take a look at this article. And I put these particular resources in the content for this particular week. So you can go check it out. You know, when I saw this particular article, and, you know, again, you know, we're talking about affordances, right? And how some of these platforms start to interact with us as people, okay? So I'm going to share this particular article. And again, you can find this article in content on Lamaku for this particular week. And you can sort of read it and you know, see what you think about it. So let me get to my share here. Okay. Okay. So can anybody define what ipsification is? Ipsification. So I thought this, I did not know what ipsification was. So my first inclination was to think that it was a play on the IP, like either internet protocol or intellectual property. So it was like the IP-ification of something. But it turns out that ipsification actually is a word. And if I look it up, let's see, let me find a definition. Well, it's not coming up with a definition right now, but basically it's kind of like self-pleasure, okay? And you can think of it as like, I think he says it in the article. So it's kind of like just giving yourself sort of like this self-pleasure. Now, this is an actual, not a live creature. It's a palm-sized creature using AI to develop a unique and evolving personality. The companion looks like a cross between an owl and a tribble. You guys know what a tribble is? Who knows what a tribble is? No? Okay, and this is not a question for Jim, Steve, or Ken. So I take it maybe Star Trek was more my generation than your guys' generation, but a tribble was a little creature that looked like this. It didn't have an eye, but it was like a little furry little creature. So that's what a tribble is. And this one with an eye, you know, kind of has that look like an owl. But basically, okay, this is an AI creature that responds directly to your ability to take care of it. You guys remember, or maybe Jim or Steve, you guys remember the Tamagotchi? So Tamagotchi was a Japanese, kind of like a little toy, but you have to take care of it. But it, it's a toy, and this is like the 2025 version of that. But this is like a furry, AI-driven toy that costs $429. But it is directly related to your ability to take care of it. Now, you're taking care of it, but it's just a toy, right? So it's feeding off of your human desire to want to care for something. And it says over here, this is built by Casio. The Moflin, I guess is what it's called, can't walk, but it has touch sensors on its head, plus an accelerometer, gyroscope, microphone, light and temperature sensors. It responds to touch and recognizes its owner's voice. It has a rechargeable battery and recharges in its nest. And then it says here, Casio says the gadget was designed to feel natural, lovable, and alive. It coos, responds to your presence, and stimulates breathing. Okay, so I bring this to you guys' attention because this fellow who wrote this article, and this might be like a Steve question, how much authority do I give somebody like a Mike Elgin who wrote this article? And I would say that I would give him a fair amount of credibility because I've known Mike Elgin ever since he was part of, or still is, a part of a podcast called This Week in Tech. And so he's been, out there talking about tech, and he put this blog together on Substack called Machine Society. So anyway, he brings this creature to our attention. And in the context of this class, I wanted to bring it to your attention because, we're talking about social media, we're talking about affordances and how some of these platforms enable you to communicate. But here's something that doesn't necessarily require your ability to communicate any further than just responding to it and its desire to be, kind of like loved. But its love is just, it's mechanical because it's it's kind of AI driven and it's based on sensors, but it will respond and give you feedback based on your ability to, keep it cooing. So I thought this is an interesting example to think of as you start to maybe, digest this idea of affordances and what is this. Think of it as a platform. It's not necessarily a communication platform that goes beyond your interacting with it, but it does have some very unique technologies that enable you to communicate to it, and it then communicates back to you, and then you ultimately form a relationship to it. But it's mostly driven by the pleasure that you get for caring for this sort of, inanimate object. So anyway, I thought it was an interesting device in the year 2025 and in the context of this particular class. So you guys can take a look at that, and if you do decide to buy one, let me know. I'd like to hear how your experience is with this Moflin. Now, yeah, just I did want to. I'll put it in the content for next time. And if you get a chance to watch this video that I wanted to share with you, it is also an interesting video that kind of talks about something that we don't really talk about in this class. But this class is all about the platforms, right? The platforms that are very much occupying our time and attention. And, you know, as you probably guessed, I mean, I spend some time, you know, perusing places like TikTok, and the algorithm has been interesting in what it, you know, what it shares with me. And that's some of the fodder that I pull and share with you all. But as you guys all know, you know, there's a looming sale and restructuring that's happening with TikTok, and it involves some U.S. companies. And the video that I'll post is a woman's analysis on how this was a plan that took place a good many years ago that was kind of unfolding over the course of time, and has been, as of recent, you know, culminated and taken advantage of by companies like Meta and Oracle that sort of are directly involved with the ultimate kind of takeover. And not only is it about the companies, but it's about the infrastructure that enables these companies to be, you know, these billion-dollar companies. And the thing that I wanted to point out to you as you watch the video is that, you know, we as participants are kind of using these platforms for whatever, you know, community or message we want to help to get across. But there's a whole nother layer of, you know, sort of business acumen that's happening, probably not to our deep knowledge, because, you know, we're not delving deeply into the underlying kind of reasons or the underlying motivations that are taking place. It involves huge data centers. It involves huge data sets. It involves, and this is crazy, I mean, it involves wars, and it involves the data gathering of how people conduct themselves during these wars. And these companies are getting involved with it at a level that we are rarely exposed to, that sometimes gives, I mean, it definitely gives me pause to think about. You know, we touched the very surface of these applications, but there's a lot of stuff under the surface. And this woman sort of helps to pull the veil over those, you know, those perceptions, and gives you a view of, you know, what's happening at a much grander scale. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. And then I did want to answer Steve's question, which is going to always be, Bert, how do you know this is a trusted source? And so one of the things that I do when I first encounter these particular influencers and quote unquote sort of experts is, number one, I look at how many people are actually following them. And this particular woman, she had probably like more than 100,000 followers, which is pretty good on TikTok. And she also has a another blog sort of platform is called Substack. And so she has a Substack that's quite popular. And so there's indications that there's others that are really kind of respecting what it is that she's conveying. So those are some things that I look for that help me kind of determine, is this a valid source of information? And again, you can use your own set of criteria. And I'm curious to hear what you guys decide as criteria and whether this particular person lives up to that level of criteria. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. Like I said, I'll post the video. You guys can take a look at it, and if we have time, we can sort of talk about it on Thursday when we reconvene. So with that, I want to thank you all for joining me on this Tuesday. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Maybe we can tackle it now, or we can save it for Thursday. But Thursday's speaker is another really great speaker, and he will give you a perspective of nation of Hawaii. They're located at Pu'uhonua, Waimanalo, and I think it'll be a really good talk for all of you who are interested in what's happening with some of the Native Hawaiian movements. Okay, so with that,
Okay, Bert,
I want to say aloha to everybody, and I'll
Bert,
see you guys on
comment.
Thursday.
Bert, comment.
Yep.
Bert?